I refused to let my step-siblings take over my late father's business. They mocked me, saying, "You can't handle his legacy." My stepmother threatened, "Walk away or I'll destroy everything he built." Trembling with rage, I vowed, "You'll regret underestimating me." But when I unveiled my father's hidden plan, they were left powerless. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where everyone knew each other. My father, a hard-working man, built a modest but successful construction company from the ground up. He was respected in the community, not just for his business acumen, but for his integrity. After my mother passed away when I was 10, it was just Dad and me. We were close. He taught me everything about the business, how to read blueprints, manage clients, and treat employees with respect. When I was 16, Dad remarried. His new wife, Patricia, brought along her 2 children, Mark and Lisa. They were around my age, and while we tried to get along, there was always tension. Patricia was controlling, always trying to insert herself into the business, even though she had no experience. Dad kept her at bay, insisting that the business was his and that I was his successor. He made it clear to everyone that I would take over when the time came. Dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack when I was 25. It was a devastating blow. Amidst the grief, Patricia and her children began to circle like vultures. At the reading of the will, I was shocked. Dad had left the business to me, as expected, but Patricia was named as the executor of the estate. She had control over the assets until the estate was settled. Patricia wasted no time. She tried to assert control over the company, claiming that as executor, she had the authority. Mark and Lisa, who had never shown interest in the business before, suddenly wanted to be involved. They mocked me, saying, "You can't handle his legacy." Patricia threatened, "Walk away, or I'll destroy everything he built." I was trembling with rage. I vowed, "You'll regret underestimating me." I remembered that Dad had always been meticulous. He must have anticipated something like this. I searched his office, going through files and documents, looking for any clue. After days of searching, I found a sealed envelope labeled with my name. Inside was a letter from Dad and a set of documents. The letter explained that he had anticipated Patricia's moves and had taken steps to protect the business. He had created a trust, placing the business assets into it, with me as the sole beneficiary. The documents included the trust agreement and instructions on how to assert my rights. Armed with this information, I consulted with a lawyer. We filed the necessary paperwork to transfer control of the business to me, bypassing Patricia's authority as executor. When Patricia received the legal notice, she was furious. She called me, screaming, accusing me of betrayal. Mark and Lisa tried to rally the employees against me, but they failed. The staff respected me and knew I was the rightful heir. Patricia attempted to challenge the trust in court, but the documents were airtight. The judge dismissed her claims, and I was officially recognized as the owner of the company. With control of the business secured, I made some changes. I promoted loyal employees, expanded our services, and honored Dad's legacy by maintaining the company's integrity. Patricia, Mark, and Lisa were left with nothing. They had underestimated me, and their greed led to their downfall. I learned a valuable lesson. Always be prepared, and never let anyone bully you out of what's rightfully yours. Just when I thought things were finally settling down, something strange started to happen. It began with whispers. One of our suppliers mentioned in passing that our accounts were behind. That didn't make sense. I kept a close eye on the books. I checked the records, cross-referenced invoices, and that's when I saw it. The numbers weren't matching up. Tens of thousands of dollars were missing. My stomach dropped. At first, I thought it was an accounting error. Maybe my new office manager had made a mistake? But as I dug deeper, I found forged signatures, falsified receipts, and transfers made to an unknown LLC. I tracked the name of that LLC, and my blood went cold. It was registered under Lisa's name. She'd been siphoning money from the company before I even took full control. And worse, she must have had help. These documents were buried so well, I never would have noticed if not for that supplier. I kept quiet. If I exploded too early, they'd just deny it. Instead, I reached out to a private investigator. Over the next 3 weeks, he followed the money trail. What he uncovered made my skin crawl. Lisa and Mark had been working with an ex-employee, Ron, one of Dad's old foremen who left the company after an argument about safety violations. Together, they'd started a shadow construction business in Pennsylvania using our equipment, our clients, and Dad's old contacts. They were underbidding us using insider knowledge. No wonder we'd lost 3 big contracts last quarter. I wanted to scream, but I stayed calm. I had evidence now. Emails, bank transfers, business registration documents. I didn't rush to court this time. I had something better in mind. That Friday, I walked into the office like nothing was wrong. Lisa wasn't there, hadn't been for weeks, apparently exploring opportunities. Mark, though, strolled in like he owned the place, probably thinking I was too dumb to notice the bleeding. I called a staff meeting. In front of everyone, our foreman, our bookkeeper, our crew, I laid out the findings. No yelling, no cursing, just cold facts on the projector screen. The room was dead silent. Then I said it. Lisa and Mark used this company like their personal ATM. They stole from my father's legacy. And I promise you, they will pay. The tension cracked like a dry twig. Mark lunged at me, furious, shouting I was lying. But it was too late. I had already emailed the evidence to our legal team and the police. He was escorted out. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, Patricia showed up at my house. I opened the door, and she pushed her way in like a storm in heels. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You think you've won?" She was shaking with rage, mascara smeared, voice ragged. "I built that family. I sacrificed everything for your father. And now you've ruined my children." I stared at her, stunned. "Your children did that to themselves. You're going to regret this," she whispered. "I'll bury this company. I'll make sure no one works with you again." And then she walked out. The threats didn't stop there. She started calling old clients, spreading lies. Said I was unstable, that I had driven Dad into an early grave. Claimed the company was going under. Even showed up at job sites, harassing my team. One night, around 11 p.m., I got a call from my lawyer. "You might want to sit down," he said. "Patricia just filed a motion to contest the trust. She claims your father was coerced, that his mind was already going." I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. "She has medical documents," he added. "A doctor's note from a month before your dad died, stating he showed signs of cognitive decline. But I knew my father. He was sharp as ever, even the day before he died. Something wasn't right. I did some digging. That doctor? He was Patricia's cousin. Dirty. Real dirty. But something unexpected happened. While going through Dad's old safe again, I found a series of voice recordings, conversations between him and his attorney, talking about the trust, talking about me, about how he knew Patricia would go nuclear. They were time-stamped and notarized. This wasn't just a counterattack. It was a loaded weapon. All I had to do was pull the trigger. I thought I had every secret in my hands. I had the trust documents. I had the recordings. I had caught Lisa and Mark red-handed. But there was something I missed, something Dad never told me. It started when one of our oldest employees, Henry, came to me one morning looking rattled. "You got a minute?" he asked, I starting like he was afraid of being followed. "Sure. What's up?" He sat down across from me and said, "Your dad kept a second ledger. Not the one in the office, one only I knew about. He called it the ghost ledger. It tracked every off-the-book deal, every favor, every handshake agreement he made in 30 years. I stared at him, stunned. "Where is it?" He looked me dead in the eye. "In the walls. Behind the shelf in the old storage room, the one you turned into the server closet." That night, after everyone had left, I went in with a crowbar. Behind the drywall, in a sealed compartment, was an old leather binder wrapped in plastic. Inside? Names. Companies. Kickbacks. Dirty inspections. Side jobs done with no permits. Clients who'd paid cash to avoid taxes. And Patricia's name, linked to a set of payments made during the year after she married Dad. And my father's handwriting. "Cover this if I'm gone. Only show if they come for blood." They had come for blood. I was still absorbing the weight of what I'd found when something else blew up. One of our major clients, a state-funded construction project in Cincinnati, pulled their contract, citing trust concerns. I was furious. I knew Patricia was still playing games. But when I reached out to the project manager to clear things up, she sounded hesitant. "It's not Patricia," she said. "It's someone from inside. Someone sent them a file." The file contained fake blueprints, invoices that didn't exist, and a fake email chain suggesting we had been bribing a city inspector. My hands started to shake. Who the hell would do this? I launched an internal audit. And that's when it came out. It wasn't Patricia. It wasn't Lisa. It wasn't even Ron. It was my own office manager, Terry, the one I'd hired just after Dad died. Quiet, polite, always brought donuts on Mondays. He confessed under pressure. Said he was offered money by Lisa to sabotage the company from the inside. He gave me the burner phone they used. The last message on it: "If he won't go down easy, we'll burn it to the ground." You'd think that would be enough betrayal for one life. But I wasn't done bleeding. That night, I got a call from my aunt, Dad's sister, Martha. "You need to know something," she said, her voice tight. "Your dad told me, months before he died, he suspected Patricia of poisoning him." My jaw dropped. What? He was healthy, strong. But then he started getting dizzy spells, chest pain, headaches. The doctors couldn't figure it out. He said Patricia kept giving him these vitamins. But he wouldn't confront her. He thought she'd go ballistic. I drove to the house that night. The old house Patricia still lived in. I went straight for the medicine cabinet. And there, behind expired aspirin and dusty cough drops, I found a bottle labeled magnesium complex. It wasn't filled with vitamins. I handed it to the police the next day. Within a week, it came back, laced with traces of digoxin. In high enough doses, it could mimic heart attack symptoms. While the poisoning case was brewing, my lawyer called again. This time, with a bombshell. "There's a second will." "What?" He explained that it had just been discovered in a safety deposit box under a different bank account. It was newer than the one we'd seen at the reading, and it completely rewrote the terms of the trust. In this will, my father gave me everything. The business, the estate, even the family cabin in Montana that Patricia had fought so hard to keep. But how did we miss this? He said Patricia had it hidden. Someone anonymously dropped it off at the courthouse. Later, I found out it was Henry. He'd kept a copy, just in case. My father knew this was coming. He planned for all of it. With the secret will and the poisoning evidence, the court reopened everything. Patricia was arrested and charged with attempted murder. Mark and Lisa faced charges for fraud and embezzlement. And me? I became the sole owner of everything. But I couldn't feel joy. Not yet. I stood in my father's old office the night the court ruled in my favor, looking at his framed photo. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. But it cost more than I ever thought. The phone rang. It was the police. "You should come to the station," the officer said. "There's something else you need to see." When I got to the police station, they took me into a small interview room. A detective slid a flash drive across the table. "We got this from Terry," he said. "You need to see it." I plugged it into the laptop. On the screen was a video, grainy, but clear enough. It showed Patricia sitting at our old dining room table with Lisa and Mark. They were laughing. "He'll never see it coming," Mark said. Lisa chimed in, "The moment he signs off on the permits, we'll file the false report. That'll shut the company down for good." Then Patricia, "And if he starts asking questions, we can always say he's grieving. People will believe a widow." I felt sick. It wasn't just greed. It was planned. From the moment my father died, they had mapped out how to destroy me, take the business, and cover their tracks. I leaned back in the chair, exhausted. "How long ago was this?" I asked. The detective replied, 2 weeks after the funeral. 2 weeks. With the video, the poison evidence, and the financial fraud, everything came crashing down. Patricia was charged not only with attempted murder, but conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction. Lisa and Mark were indicted for corporate theft, wire fraud, and criminal conspiracy. Ron, the ex-foreman, arrested too. It all made headlines. Local newspapers dubbed it the family that tried to bury a legacy. They didn't just lose the company. They lost everything. Their reputations, their freedom. But it didn't feel like a win. The courtroom was quiet the day Patricia was sentenced. She didn't cry. She just glared at me. Lisa refused to look at me. Mark mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I didn't care anymore. When it was all over, I stepped outside the courthouse into the cold wind and realized I wasn't blameless either. I had ignored the signs early on. I'd let Patricia get too close to Dad's business after he died. I had trusted people like Terry too fast. I'd been so obsessed with protecting Dad's legacy that I hadn't built anything of my own. For 3 years, I'd been fighting ghosts. So I made a choice. I sold the company. Not to just anyone. To one of Dad's old apprentices, a man he'd trusted like a second son. I made him promise he'd run it with the same values Dad taught me. Then I packed a small bag, took the keys to the family cabin in Montana, and disappeared for a while. I needed silence. I needed air that hadn't been touched by courtroom drama, poison, or betrayal. For the first time, I could breathe. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Patricia's handwriting. "I don't regret trying to take it all. I regret failing. Below, it was a short postscript. Your father never loved you more than he feared what you'd become. I stared at that letter for a long time. Then I burned it. Not because I was angry, because I finally understood. They all saw me as a threat. Not because I was weak, but because I was the only one who never needed their approval. And maybe that scared my father too. I never went back to Ohio. The cabin became home. I started writing memoirs, manuals, even a book on rebuilding trust in family businesses. Sometimes, I still hear Dad's voice when I'm working on a deck or cutting lumber. Measure twice, cut once. And every now and then, I wonder what would have happened if I had walked away. But I didn't. I stayed. I fought. I lost pieces of myself. But I won something more important. The truth. And the truth? It hurts like hell, but it's the only thing worth building on.